This video is brought to you by Mpaa, a curated streaming service showcasing exceptional films from around the globe. Start your 1-month free trial right now by going to mpaa.com/entertaintheelk. Near the end of a movie's credits, there's this logo that almost always pops up. There it is. I'm sure you've seen it before, but do you know what it means? It's the logo for the Motion Picture Association of America. The MPAA, now just Mpaa as of September 2019, is a trade association founded in 1922 in order to ensure the viability, stability, and success of the American film industry. But they're probably best known for their much publicized film rating system, a system that classifies films into the current categories of G, PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17. And so, seeing this Mpaa logo at the end of a movie confirms that it was rated accordingly. But for a brief moment in film history, there was the X rating, an adult rating that gave filmmakers a newfound freedom to explore and engage with the country's changing views on sexuality, violence, race, and authority, without the fear of censorship that has shrouded the industry since its inception. So, whatever happened to the X rating? Pre-Code Hollywood was a brief period in the American film industry between 1929 and 1934. A number of films in this era depicted or implied sexual innuendo, romantic relationships between white and black people, profanity, illegal drug use, prostitution, infidelity, abortion, intense violence, and homosexuality. The biggest offenders were found in gangster films like The Public Enemy, Little Caesar, and Scarface, where the lead characters were seen by many as heroic rather than evil. And also in what was referred to as sex films with female protagonists. These sexual vice films largely fell into two categories: the bad girl films, like Red-Headed Woman,
Oh, do it again, I like it, do it again.
and Babyface.
Of course, if Fuzzy Wuzzy really wants to give me something, he could put a few more pennies in my bank account.
Where women wielded sex as a means of advancing their lives and careers. And then there were the fallen women films, like She Had to Say Yes, which were inspired by the real-life hardships women were enduring in the workplace during the Depression.
I'm not gonna get out. My money's as good as theirs. Now you just close your eyes and pretend I'm a buyer. I'll buy.
Behind the scenes, Hollywood started to be viewed as a growing cesspool of sex, drugs, and violence. One of the biggest scandals to rock Hollywood in the early 20s was when star Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was accused of the rape and murder of actress Virginia Rappe. The sensationalized trial included Rappe's bladder being introduced as evidence, testimony about her many illegal abortions, and a star witness with history of charges including extortion, fraud, and racketeering. With movies not being protected under the First Amendment and fearing government interference for its transgressions on and off screen, the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, what is now the MPAA, was formed.
You want entertainment, wholesome, interesting, and vital? This, the motion picture industry, is pledged to provide.
Republican politician William H. Hayes was put in charge and convinced filmmakers that it was better to self-censor than invite the government to do it for them. He instituted the Production Code, which would later become known as the Hays Code. Its stated aim was to maintain social and community values in the production of silent, synchronized, and talking motion pictures. The Production Code contained guidelines on what shouldn't be portrayed on film. Obviously, this was an imperfect solution, with frustrated filmmakers on one side and threats of censorship by government officials and religious leaders on the other. By the 1960s, the country was experiencing a radical shift in terms of sex, violence, and drugs. A revolution of social change was sweeping across the country, but the strict production code was keeping American films from accurately reflecting this tumultuous shift. The American film industry was losing its audience to television and foreign films that had more freedom of expression. With the demand rising for a more complex system of regulation than the production code's approved and not approved system, the MPAA, led by Jack Valenti, established CARA, the Code and Rating Administration, later renamed the Classification and Rating Administration. CARA began issuing ratings for films exhibited and distributed commercially in the United States to help parents determine if films were appropriate for their children. The initial rating system launched on November 1st, 1968, with 4 tiers: G, M, R, and X. And for a brief period in the late 60s and early 70s, the X rating not only worked, but thrived. It provided a newfound freedom for filmmakers to fully engage with the era's shifting mores. In its first year, the movie Midnight Cowboy was released.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
It was later nominated for 7 Academy Awards and even won for Best Picture, the only X-rated film to do so. A few years later, A Clockwork Orange was released with the X rating, and it was also nominated for a number of Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
I'm singing in the road, just singing in the road.
Many mainstream films at the time were released with the X rating, such as Last Summer, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, The Street Fighter, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, Fritz the Cat, Last Tango in Paris, The Evil Dead. Films like these would never have seen the light of day without the change in system. But, much like the Hays Code before it, the rating system was, and still is, flawed. The decisions made by the anonymous committee members have always seemed to be arbitrary or unclear, with a well-earned reputation for being more lenient on violence but more strict on language and sexuality. The CARA has always maintained that their rating system is voluntary, but that's never really been the case. The National Association of Theater Owners, NATO, has an agreement with MPAA to enforce the system. In other words, opt out of the MPAA's rating and very few theaters will show your movie. It's just another way to hold the studios and filmmakers captive in a financial sense. Filmmakers were either forced to re-edit their films to achieve a more financially viable R rating. For example, RoboCop apparently had to be re-edited 11 times before finally attaining an R. Or, filmmakers could reject the X and choose to release their film unrated, just as George A. Romero did for his film Dawn of the Dead. Again, a dangerous decision to make because of NATO, but taking one of these two options eventually became the lesser of two evils. Over time, the X rating eventually became a death sentence to a film, and it was all because of a trademark. The MPAA made a crucial error when they first established their rating system. Though G, R, and later PG-13 were trademarked, X never was. With no registered trademark, the X could legally be self-applied to any film, a loophole that the pornography industry happily exploited. The notorious 1972 porno film Deep Throat proudly gave itself an X rating, and many other porno films followed suit. All of a sudden, in the eye of the rating system, there was no difference between Midnight Cowboy and Is There Sex After Marriage? It didn't take long before porno films upped it to XX, and then the now adult industry standard XXX, a marketing promise for 3 times the adult entertainment. The damage to the X was done. It became synonymous with the porn industry. And after that, mainstream theaters began putting rules into place prohibiting the distribution of X-rated movies. Any X-rated movie. Newspapers and television stations wouldn't advertise them, and family-friendly rental stores like Blockbuster refused to carry any film with an X. With little to no chance of marketing and distributing the films, studios stopped making them. The X rating and the creative freedom it allowed filmmakers was basically dead. Under growing pressure from filmmakers, the MPAA finally introduced a new adult-only rating in 1990 with NC-17. Even though they abandoned the X, NC-17 was still immediately subject to the same stigmas and prohibitions. The first NC-17 feature film, Henry and June, was a commercial failure. It took 5 years for another studio to release an NC-17 film with 1995's Showgirls, and that bombed commercially too. Like the X before it, NC-17 has been described as a kiss of death for any film that receives it, because it drastically limits a film's prospects of being marketed, screened in theaters, and sold in video outlets. And again, a lot of these rating determinations seem to boil down to sexuality and language in the eyes of the CARA committee members. Movies like Boys Don't Cry and American Psycho had to make cuts to sex scenes in order to obtain the much coveted R rating. But the board members were perfectly fine with the severe amounts of violence throughout. The film Passion of the Christ is considered one of the most violent movies ever made, but it's assumed that it was given an R rating because of its religious context, even though less violent films have been slapped with the NC-17. There have been some critically successful films that have come out in recent years wearing the NC-17 rating, such as 2011's Shame and 2013's Blue is the Warmest Color, that have boldly addressed contemporary sexuality, but they're few and far between. Long gone are the days where adult-only films could carry an artistic freedom and commercial success without any unfair and undeserved stigmas. And to think this all could have been avoided with a simple trademark. I love exploring film history and discovering unique films with offbeat storylines that aren't often talked about. If that sounds like you, then you have to go check out Mpaa. Mpaa is an online cinema that streams hand-selected films from around the globe. Every day they premiere a new film, whether it's a timeless classic, a cult favorite, or an award-winning documentary. There's always something new to discover. And with a lot of us still in quarantine and desperate for something interesting to watch, it's never been a better time to check out Mpaa. And it's absolutely free for 1 month, so you can check it out, see what they have to offer at no risk. Go to mpaa.com/entertaintheelk in order to start your 1 month free trial and start enjoying movies right now. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick dive into film history. If you did, please like it and share it with a friend, and also leave me a comment below. Tell me what your favorite rated X or NC-17 movie is. If you want to support Entertain the Elk and help me make more videos, please check out my Patreon page. I have exclusive content and rewards for people who support the channel. But another way to help me is by checking out the sponsors I'm working with. Do the free trial and use my unique code. It really helps strengthen relationships with current and future sponsors, which helps me make more videos. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I will see you all next time.